What if I told you that one of Africa's youngest leaders has just pulled off one of the biggest oil agreements in the continent's modern history? Yes, you heard that right. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso has signed a breathtaking $75 billion crude oil partnership with India. And this is not just another trade deal buried in the newspapers. This is a turning point that could shape Africa's economic and political destiny for generations to come. Burkina Faso, a small landlocked nation in the heart of West Africa, has often been ignored on the global stage. For decades, its people have lived under the weight of poverty, political upheavals, and the long shadow of neocolonial exploitation. But today, under the leadership of a bold 36-year-old soldier-turned-statesman, Burkina Faso is beginning to write a brand new chapter. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré came to power in 2022 at the age of just 34, he became the youngest head of state in the world. From the very beginning, his message was sharp, simple, and uncompromising. Burkina Faso must be free, independent, and self-reliant. Unlike many African leaders who continue to lean heavily on Western institutions and former colonial powers, Traoré started looking elsewhere for partnerships. His vision has always been rooted in the principles of Pan-Africanism, sovereignty, and South-South cooperation. This $75 billion oil agreement with India is his boldest move so far. For India, a nation that ranks as the world's third-largest consumer of crude oil, this deal secures a long-term and stable supply. For Burkina Faso, a nation with untapped reserves and a GDP of barely $20 billion, this agreement is nothing short of revolutionary. So what exactly is inside this enormous $75 billion agreement? Let's break it down. India will provide the capital, technology, and expertise for oil exploration and drilling across Burkina Faso's territory. Massive investments will flow into refining capacity, pipelines, storage facilities, and modern transport routes. In return, India secures long-term crude supply contracts that guarantee energy security for its rapidly growing population of 1.4 billion people. For Burkina Faso, the benefits are monumental. First, job creation on an unprecedented scale. Tens of thousands of young men and women will find opportunities in construction, logistics, refinery operations, and support industries. Second, infrastructure development that the nation has long dreamed of. Roads, pipelines, and power plants that not only serve the oil industry but also improve daily life. Third, national revenue that could dwarf anything the country has seen before. Through taxes, royalties, and export earnings, the government will gain billions of dollars annually. To put it in perspective, a nation with a GDP of just $20 billion is about to manage a deal almost 4 times larger than its entire economy. That is why observers are calling this agreement transformative. But beyond numbers, there is also a question of symbolism. Why India? Why not France, the United States, or any other Western power that has historically dominated West Africa's resources? The answer lies in history and trust. India itself was once a colony, and it understands the painful scars of foreign exploitation. Unlike many Western deals that come with hidden conditions, military pressure, or structural demands, Indian partnerships often emphasize mutual respect and shared growth. By turning to India, Traoré is sending a loud message to the world. Burkina Faso will no longer be dictated to. We will choose our partners on our own terms. This is not only about oil, it is about reclaiming dignity. Of course, such a monumental deal brings challenges. Western powers who have traditionally held dominance over African energy markets will not quietly accept this shift. There will be political pushback, perhaps even covert attempts to destabilize Burkina Faso's progress. Building pipelines and massive refineries in a landlocked nation is also a logistical challenge. And history reminds us that oil wealth, if mismanaged, can attract corruption, conflict, and division. But Ibrahim Traoré seems determined to avoid those traps. His government has pledged transparency, promising that oil revenues will not end up in the pockets of corrupt elites, but instead flow into schools, hospitals, and infrastructure for the people. If he can keep that promise, then this agreement will truly stand as one of Africa's greatest turning points. Let's step back for a moment and consider the broader significance of this. For decades, Africa has been described as a paradox, the richest continent in natural resources but the poorest in development. Gold, diamonds, uranium, oil, and gas. Trillions of dollars in resources have left the continent, yet the people often remain in poverty. Why? because the rules of the game were written by outsiders and the profits flowed outward instead of inward. Now, with leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, that equation is changing. By signing a fair, balanced deal with India, he is proving that African nations can negotiate as equals on the global stage. If Burkina Faso succeeds in implementing this project transparently, other nations in the Sahel and across the continent may follow. Mali, Niger, Chad, and even larger economies like Nigeria could be inspired to rethink their partnerships and demand fairer contracts. This is the essence of a new South-South cooperation model, where developing nations collaborate directly with one another rather than depending on traditional Western intermediaries. Imagine an Africa that exports refined oil products, not just crude. Imagine regional trade blocs where infrastructure projects are funded by African nations and their partners in Asia or Latin America, not dictated by former colonial power. But the heart of this story isn't just about trade. It's about identity. It's about young Africans, who make up more than 60% of the population, finally seeing leaders who reflect their aspirations. Traoré often speaks passionately about youth empowerment, sovereignty, and a future where Africa's children inherit not poverty, but prosperity. This oil deal is a tangible demonstration of those ideals. So let's recap. A young African leader, once a little-known captain in the Burkinabe army, has now become the architect of one of the boldest economic moves in Africa's modern history. A $75 billion crude oil deal with India that promises job, infrastructure, and long-term growth. A deal that could double or even triple Burkina Faso's GDP within a decade. A deal that challenges neocolonial structures and sets a precedent for the rest of the continent. Yes, there are risks, political resistance, logistical hurdles, and the danger of mismanagement. But there is also unprecedented opportunity. This is about more than barrels of oil. This is about hope, courage, and a new African independence. If successful, Burkina Faso will not only change its own destiny, but may also light a path for the entire continent. Africa will finally prove that its resources belong first and foremost to its own people. So, what do you think? Is this oil deal a gamble too big for a small landlocked nation? Or is it the spark of a new African revolution, where leaders choose sovereignty over submission, dignity over dependency, and hope over despair? If you believe Africa deserves leaders who put their people first, then don't just watch this story. Share it, talk about it, read it. Because history is being written right now, and it's starting in Burkina Faso.